I'm Adam Wyner, and I'm giving this talk towards a formalization of value-based actions and consequentialist ethics. This is a paper written along with my colleagues Strachura-Zurek and Strachura-Zurek. This is also based on some prior work we did last year and worked up for this workshop. So the key concepts are that we're going to talk briefly about consequentialist ethics. We'll talk about the problem statement. We'll give a brief overview of what we call value-based formal reasoning, VFR, as well as STRIPS, although STRIPS is largely familiar to this audience. We'll talk about the integration of value-based state transitions, that is, adding VFR to STRIPS. We'll give a short example and then some conclusions. So when we talk about ethics, and here I'm going to use ethics and morality interchangeably, that may be disputable, but it's convenient for our purposes here. There are three main normative ethical theories. There's deontology, where we talk about obligations and prohibition. We can talk about virtue ethics, where we have irreducible virtue concepts such as benevolence. And we can talk about consequentialism, where consequentialism is whether an act is morally right depends only on the consequences. So in this paper, we focus on this notion of consequentialism with respect to actions. There are variants of consequentialism. Our model is said to be satisficing, that is the selection of less than optimal but good enough consequences. It's pluralistic in the sense that there are a variety of values that we can consider. It's act-based because the consequences are evaluated for a single act. And it's preferential in that each agent seeks their own value preference fulfillment. So there's a lot more to say about ethical theories and how to implement them, but we won't cover that here. How do values shape the agent's behavior? Well, values are abstract concepts which allow for the estimation of a state of affairs and which influence one's behavior. So the intuition that we have is that an agent performs actions in order to bring about a situation that is more compatible with the agent's values than it was. In other words, the agents perform some action to realize his or her values, bring about worlds which are more compatible with that agent's values. Here are the basics of value-based formal reasoning. In other work, we tied this to argumentation. Here we're just specifically focused on actions. We have agents, we have propositions, which are just atomic. We have a notion of incompatible propositions, where pairs of propositions cannot occur in any set. Later we'll have that as states of affairs, the relations symmetric. We have values, which are abstract objects, which express some value concepts such as freedom or security. We have a scale, which is totally ordered in a finite set of scalar elements. And to scale, we add this question mark in weight, which is a designated entity that it indicates that a weight is indeterminate. And question mark is unordered with respect to the other elements of scale. So that will mean that an expression comparing question mark to any other element is going to result in false. We have two basic functions that we use to construct propositions which are compatible with an agent's value world. So we have one which is called agent value to weight, which indicates the importance that the agent ascribes to a value. So the higher the weight, the more important the value is, and the lower the weight, the less important the value is, and it's a total function. Question mark signals the indeterminate importance of a given value. It's kind of like the agent says they don't care. The second one is an agent's value assessment. An agent assesses an element of a proposition with respect to a value and a weight. In this way, this expresses an agent's disposition towards a proposition with respect to values and weights, saying that for a particular proposition relative to a value, it's important to such and such a degree. Throughout this talk, by the way, it's all going to be rather abstract. In other work, we have much more concrete examples, but here we have a very simplified example that we'll work with later. And again, it's a total function, and the use of question mark signals that there are props that are not assessed in effect. Again, they don't care. So these two functions are conceptually distinct in that agent value to weight expresses an agent's ideal and global view on values, while agent value prop weight expresses an agent's assessment of a particular proposition in terms of their association with a value. We can then use these two to create an agent's value-based worldview. That is, we gather together all those propositions that are compatible with an agent's values. And this we will give in a moment formally, but in words, the weight in an agent's value profile that the agent assigns to a proposition relative to a value must not be less than the weight in the agent's value assessment that the agent assigns to that value. In other words, the agent's value-based worldview, every proposition must pass the filter of acceptability relative to the agent's value profile. So that would be given formally here, and I won't go through this at this point. So there are a couple of things to say about this notion of prop-based clean, that is this collection of propositions which pass the agent's value weight. For a particular agent, the lower the weight on a particular value in the agent's value profile implies that there's a lower discriminatory threshold on the acceptability of props with respect to that value. In other work, we can see that in more detail. Any set of prop-based clean can contain incompatible props, and two agents can accept the same proposition yet for different settings of values and weights. We make some assumptions about prop-based clean being static and private, not particularly important here. And prop-based clean only represents those propositions that an agent accepts relative to their value profile. And we say nothing about truth or belief here. We also have this notion of the complement of prop-based clean, all of those propositions which are not accepted by the agent relative to their value weight, all the propositions which are unacceptable and don't pass the filter. We also then move on to talk about state transitions. We have basically states are consistent sets of propositions, and we're going to talk about that in terms of strips. I assume that strips is fairly familiar. We have a set of conditions, propositional variables. We have a set of operators, which are actions, where we have preconditions for the action to be executed, preconditions that must be false for the action to be executed, postconditions that are made true by the execution of the action that are added to the subsequent state, and postconditions that are made false or removed between the preconditioned state and the postconditioned state. For our purposes, the focus is going to be on Z, what it is that the agent is making true in the postconditioned state. We have an initial state, which are a set of conditions, and then we also have a goal state given as a pair, NM, where N is the conditions that we want to make true, and M are the sets of propositions that we want to make false. We relativize the goal state to the agent's prop-based clean, so all of the positive goals that an agent has are a subset of prop-based clean, and N is not inconsistent. It's a consistent set of propositions. So the agent's goal is to achieve a state holding its positive propositions which pass its value-based filter. So we relativize strips to the goal, as well as relativize specific actions relative to how an agent executes actions. So here, the actions of an agent are quadruple, where Z, that is the postconditions, the things that are added to the postconditioned state, are relativized to those propositions which pass the agent's prop-based clean. So the agent only executes actions that are compatible with their values. At this point, we don't eliminate propositions that are incompatible with the agent's values, and we'll say something about this in a moment. So we have a short example here. Suppose we have a set of propositions. we know what an agent's prop-based clean is going to be, P2, P3, P4, and we have an initial state. We have three operators that we can create. Here we're not yet focused on which are available plans for the agent, just in general. So here in the post-condition state, we're adding P3 for action 01. In action 02, we're adding P3 and P5. And in action 3, we're adding P4. And we have as the goal of the agent to achieve that P4 is in the state. In standard strips, not strips with VFR, there are two possible plans that we could create. Either action 1 followed by 3, in which case the final state is P2, P3, P4, or we could have action 2 followed by action 3, which in the final state contains all 5 of the propositions. However, when we look at actions, strips with actions, and we're filtering these, only the first plan is one that we can carry out, that this agent can carry out. The second action, the second plan where we have O2 and O3 does not pass it because following this sequence, the plan would introduce P5, which is not in the agent's prop-based clean, so it's not acceptable to the agent. And then you notice also that proposition P1 is not filtered out in the post-condition state. So we can, here we have a brief proposal about removing from the post-condition states of actions, when an action is executed, those propositions which are unacceptable relative to the agent's value profile, and that's given in this proposal to remove bad things. There are other ways of considering how to sort of clean up states from bad things, that is, things that an agent doesn't like, and we can consider a variety of those. We don't do that here. So the conclusions are here we have a mechanism to take into consideration actions relative to an agent's values. The consequences are relative to the agent's value profile and value assessment. It's individualized rather than having some universal value hierarchy. We can deal with undesirable propositions either by ignoring them, which is a liberal option, or removing all non-acceptable propositions, or maybe even just removing some of them. It's a multi-agent system. Its behavior reflects value choices. It relativizes strips to different agents with individualized sets of operators and their own goals. And it introduces a possibility of value-based cooperation between the agents. The consequences are represented by states of affairs, and those states of affairs should be good enough for the agent in moral terms, which then accounts for the satisficing variant of consequentialism. That is, whatever state of affairs has to be good enough relative to the agent's value profile, but it doesn't need to be good absolutely with respect to everything that the agent likes. And it's highly individualized because it's just that particular agent's preference. So thank you very much, and I look forward to comments.